Hello and welcome to Angular America's Application Accepted. So it's been a little bit of a break for all of us over the holidays, and I think a well-deserved break. Everyone's been working hard. It's actually, I know everybody's from different countries, so maybe everybody doesn't have the same traditions, but hopefully you had your Christmas tree and or whatever you call or whatever you celebrate. You had good time with your family and that type of thing. But now we are back ready to talk about a lot of fun Angular related topics and stuff. So let's get started talking about the Angular news and Angular happenings from the past couple of weeks. And I don't know if Kyler, you prepared anything for this? Otherwise, we can just talk sort of ad hoc. But what do you have in your radar for just general Angular news?
So the big thing that I wanted to talk about is on blog.angular.io, they recently talked about some things on the roadmap coming in 2022. And a couple of those things that I'm really excited about are standalone components, directives, and pipes. That's pretty exciting, and strictly typed reactive forms, which has kind of been long awaited. They've in the blog post, they also teased some additional improved build time performance and developer experience improvements. So I'm pretty excited to see what that brings. I do have a few points for Angular 13. I know it's been out for a while, but not everybody's had a chance to upgrade or work with it yet. So I was just going to go over a few of those things, if that's all right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so in Angular 13, View Engine is no longer available, which means Angular can reduce its reliance on the Angular Compatibility Compiler, or NGCC, as we colloquially call it. That means basically that would translate to faster compilation times. So, that's great. Changes in the Angular package format removed older output formats, including View Engine specific metadata. They modernized it on the ES 2020 specification. So that's important because the packages built with this new Angular package format will no longer require NGCC. So the package output will be leaner and will have faster execution. So thanks to Ivy, the component API no longer requires a component factory resolver when you're dynamically creating components. You can just use the view container ref, create component function. No more IE11 support, which that's another thing I'm pretty excited about. I'm ready for that thing to go away. Persistent build cache by default, which brings up to 68% improvement in build time. We moved to RxJS 7.4 is the default for new projects now, and there's a ton of good stuff in RxJS 7. We upgraded from version 6. A few of the things that I'm really excited about there is combine latest once again takes a object map similar to fork join. So if you're using combine latest, you no longer have to pass in an array of observables and then map that to an object if you want to use that in a template. So that's something I'm excited about. It also comes with combine latest with, zip with, merge with, a bunch of inline pipeable combination operators. So that's pretty cool.
Those are basically renamed existing operators, but they are renamed so that you can use them in a pipe, and they are different from the creation operators. And you can import everything from RxJS itself. You don't need to import from /observer the operators anymore, which is nicer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So I was pretty excited about going to RxJS 7. The other thing is we have some improvements for testing. The DOM gets cleaned after every test, so devs can expect faster and more optimized tests. Improved accessibility for Angular material components, including contrast, touch targets, ARIA labels, and more. I haven't really played around with the improvements they've made there yet, but in their blog post about the Angular 13 release, they do have some illustrations there, and they go a little bit more into depth if you want to check that out there. Built-in validators can be disabled by setting a value to null. I've run into this issue before when building dynamic forms, so that's pretty cool that we have that now. And another thing that I thought was pretty exciting is the router will now emit, activate, and deactivate events when an outlet gets attached and detached, which is something I've needed in the past. So those are some of the highlights from Angular 13, just since we haven't had a chance to talk about it.
You're muted, Jeff.
Oh my gosh, rookie mistake. Sorry about that. Yeah, I actually have a couple things that I was gonna or wanted to go back on for what you had talked about for i11 support. Actually, I'm curious. Do any of you listening here still test on IE at all? I'm just curious.
In my past job, and they're still in business, IE11 was a requirement. So
Really, how many years ago was that?
that was last year,
Or-
actually. Oh, no,
really? Okay.
last year, no, 2020. I'm sorry, 2021 didn't happen for me. 2020.
What do you mean 2020 didn't happen for you?
It didn't happen. Sorry, man. I didn't count it.
Yeah.
I didn't have a birthday.
Yes.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. Oh wow, it's horrible. It's like time stood still, right? With this COVID, it's crazy. Yeah.
It
Yeah,
did.
In some ways, it's been like no time that's passed, and in other ways, it's been like a lifetime.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for IE11, for example, time passed because it
Yeah.
had its due date, so it's finally dying, and I'm so happy for that.
Yeah. Also, I last time that I used IE11, that was a requirement, was in 2018. So it's like,
Last time I
Yep.
did that was 2008.
Oh wow!
wow.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. It's been about that long for me as well. It's kind of crazy. But oh, and then for reactive forms, like that's one of those things. I mean, there's a lot of benefits for that, and I feel like that's one of those things that a lot of people are gonna be excited about for sure. I feel like just in general, one of the strengths of Angular, like I was actually, my wife does some React work, so I still see, even though I'm not actively doing React stuff right now, so I still kind of like look into the ecosystem sometimes. And I feel like this is one of those areas where like Angular really has a strength over some other frameworks, where like just the developer experience support for autocomplete, because of the way that some of the framework is set up, that and they're continuing to make it better and better, so that in templates, in other things, that you'll be able to have more and more introspection into what is going on as you're developing it, which is like really awesome. And not all of the frameworks have that, right?
Yeah, I just come out of a podcast, and one of the strengths that I mentioned indeed is the tooling in Angular, and one of the tooling is like the code server and all the support we get in the editors, which is amazing. That is, we glance over that until you have to work in some other framework, and then you think, how do people work with this thing?
Exactly. Oh my God. Do you remember there was a time when we actually didn't use TypeScript or anything like that? Like actually, in fact, however many 10 plus years ago, I remember writing just raw JavaScript in like a text pad, like a non-editor.
I remember editing code with a line editor.
Yeah. Crazy.
So
Anyway.
after a couple of years of working on Angular, I had to go back and support an Angular JS project. It was a massive project, and it was like, I was so used to TypeScript and all that. It had been a while since I touched Angular JS, and that was my first foray into Angular. So I realized that TypeScript has spoiled me.
Oh yeah.
It's not just TypeScript. It is mainly the editor support and the automated documentation that comes out of TypeScript, it's less TypeScript itself. It's more the whole tooling thing that came along with it.
Yeah, that's true.
Definitely. By the way, actually, just really quick, speaking of that, I think I saw the other day that decorators were going to be. There always has been a proposal, I believe, for making that standard, and I believe that's starting to advance further. Not that, I mean, it doesn't matter one way or another for us if you're in the TypeScript world, because it's obviously built into
does
that.
matter,
But
though,
how so?
because TypeScript decorators might well be not compatible with JavaScript decorators, which is going to be a pain for everyone using decorators.
I didn't think about that.
And the problem with the current decorators is that they are only parsable or evolvable during runtime, which is not true for the Angular decorators, because those are actually not decorators at all. They get compiled away. But if you write your own decorator, it's only being evolved during runtime, and that is a slow process because it has to do all kinds of things with the prototype you don't want to know. The JavaScript people recognize this as a problem and will probably come with pre-compiled decorators that you can reuse. And basically, if you want to create a new decorator, you can compose it out of existing ones. You cannot write a free-form decorator as we are used to. So I've been avoiding decorators for the past few years because of this. Because if you are getting suckered into doing everything with decorators, which is a nice way to do things, but if it's going to be really painful to upgrade to whatever comes out of JavaScript, I would rather not use them for now and see what's coming. So
I'm glad you looked into the proposal, because I just read the top line there. So that's actually really good to know. Thanks for bringing that up. Cool.
Yeah, this is from a while back. It might be changed a little bit again, but I was talking with the implementers about this, and this is the way how they are going to approach it, because otherwise it will be too much of a runtime hog and it will be a performance issue. And they want to get rid of performance hogs and not add them to the language.
No, that makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
Well, in general, I mean, I don't think, even with full JavaScript support and regardless of how they implement it, I don't think it's a good idea to have creating decorators as kind of like a centerpiece of your software development processes or whatever. Like they're best used very sparingly in specific situations that make sense. At one point I remember I did, a long time ago, when they were first introduced TypeScript, I had this idea to build everything into like decorators and do this whole thing, and you quickly find out that well, among other things, they're very hard for other developers to kind of like grok, and if there's problems, it's kind of annoying to debug. There's all sorts of like little issues like that probably isn't a good idea.
Typing sucks.
What sucks?
Typing.
Typing.
You can, if you could use a decorator and you amend the type of the thing that you are decorating, there is no way to communicate that back to your class or the thing that you are decorating, which is a real pain point. And I believe there is something being done in TypeScript to make this at least a little bit possible, which would be a good thing.
Cool. And then the last thing from what Kyla, you went through that I was interested in is for standalone components, making it easier to build standalone components. I'd actually be interested to know, what are some of the, like, do you guys see that as something that you would utilize? Like, because I feel like it's one of these things that is interesting and will be useful to a lot of people, but like right now, maybe everybody doesn't quite see when and where they would be leveraging that feature in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can go into that a little bit. Standalone components makes a lot of sense for people new to the framework because they don't have to learn about modules, and they solve the problem with modules. Basically, you don't need them anymore. That's a good solution. The problem with modules is that you are defining the things that you can use in the template of your component in the module, which makes no sense. But that is what we need to do in Angular right now. If I want to use like an ngIf in my component, I need to import the comma module in my module, and that is an inversion of control that is unexpected, and we all take this for granted and we do it. We are used to it, but it makes no sense whatsoever, and it makes a mental block about thinking in components. So that's why I'm glad they are going away. I don't see myself refactoring everything I have done in the past at all, because it's working, and I will probably only create new things with the standalone components. And sometimes a module makes sense. If you're building a library, you might as well have like a module that bundles the whole thing together so that the people consuming your library can import the module instead of all of your distant components separately. But that also depends on what kind of library you're writing. If you're authoring a component thing where all the components are basically more or less standalone components also make a lot of sense.
Yep, makes sense, definitely. All right, before we move on to the main topic for today, just a quick check if anybody has any other questions or things they wanted to discuss with some of the Angular topics that Kyler brought up before we move on. Yeah, Jant.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about what Samuel said, and I'm wondering, like, don't you think like separating features according to modules is a better idea than having all the components of features scattered away, like into different directories?
Well, basically, you know what scam is, or how does the other guy call it? AEM. Basically, that is the same thing as standalone components. The only thing is you don't have to write a module anymore, because more or less the component is generating a sort of module for internal use, and it's not exported at all, and it's probably not going to last in the as a thing completely. It's going completely away, but for now it will be working somewhat like that. I don't think it's a matter of scattering things. If you have like a bundle of things that go together, you can have. I would not know. Some things need to be scattered. Some things need to be grouped. And if you have a set of components that work with each other, you can just import the components to each other. Just make sure you are not cyclically importing them, but that would be painful. So I don't know, if you are generating a table thing and you have a cell and a row, those are subcomponents of the table thing. You can distribute it as separate components, and they will work together. And you have to have some cross contamination anyway, because it's a group of things. You might as well put it in a module if you have like a service that goes with it and some other things. Runtime, it really doesn't matter that much, because basically what you are going to do, and it is not really how it's going to work, but this is how you can think about it. Standalone components are just like services that you provide in root, sort of, not exactly the same thing. So you have like a couple of components, and they all register in the great component registry for the injector. That doesn't mean you can use them everywhere, and you still have to import them where you want to use them. But they know of each other. So the scattering, I think it's going to be better even than with modules. it's going to be more clear where things are coming from. If you have a module, if you import a module, you have no clue what it is importing, because a module can import other modules, which a component also can do, but I'm rambling. I don't know.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
All right, Tito, I think you have a question or a comment.
Yeah, I have a question. It's like the mental picture of a standalone component is like it's global, kind of.
No, it's not global. It's basically a component in a module of its own. So if you want to use it somewhere, you have to import it.
Well, it's not registered anywhere, right?
It's not in?
Registered, as in it's not.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is registered. You hook it up to the injector, and Angular has a hierarchical injector tree. So if you hook it up in component A and everything that's below it will know about it.
So that's an interesting concept. I saw Igor Minar talking about. There is no global component registry here for standalone components, because Polymer tried that, and one of the things that it worked out great initially, but it presented a huge performance problem, and that wasn't apparent until there was no real way to navigate away from it again. So Angular team didn't want to go that route. So what Sandra was saying, like, it's basically the same as a standalone module. It just, I think it gets resolved at runtime, right?
No, it really gets resolved at compile time, because if you want to use a component, you have to import it. If I want to use my row in my table, I have to say in the component where my table is, import row. And then if I'm using cells in my row, I import the cell. So
does that mean we? So how would we lazy load a standalone component?
The same way as we lazy load a module right now, or a component for that matter.
Are lazy loaded component modules, are they resolved at runtime?
No, they are still resolved at compile time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the thing is, the compiler knows about those things. So it knows you are going to import the row component. So it knows what the row is. It doesn't need to have the row available in memory already to know what it's about. When you lazy load it, you just add it into the thing where you're going to use it. But at the moment you lazy load something, you have to declare it to the place where you are loading it.
Okay, I see. That's good stuff. That gets confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing, but it makes sense. The compiler knows all of those things, and how it's loaded at runtime really doesn't matter that much. It's lazy loading is a runtime concern, basically, because you don't want to load everything at get-go. So basically you say, hey, now I need my row. I know what a row is, but get me the runtime stuff for it. And that is basically what happens. Lazy loading is loading the runtime stuff for what the compiler already knows about.
Okay, yeah, I was confusing loading with resolving, and those are two different things. Okay, thanks.
Does that mean that they are bundled all together, the things that I am lazy loading, with whatever is lazy loading them? Because if the compiler knows and the compiler resolves them?
No. If I can have a lazy loaded component, and at the moment my lazy component is going to lazy load something else at the moment it needs, it will lazy load that part. So yes, you can have a big cascade of loading things. If you are going to lazy load every component, it might not be the most efficient way to do things, but nowadays with HTTP2, it might as well be the most interesting thing to do, because you keep all your parts small, and bundling. There has been some testing with debundling and loading every freaking thing lazy. Instead of bundling, load everything separately. It turns out there is like a point where it is more interesting to bundle than load everything apart. But it's not like a clear line. It's not like, okay, if you have 4,000, you need to bundle. If you have 3,500, oh, it doesn't matter. The proof is in the pudding. You need to try with your own stuff.
Yeah, the craziest thing as far as lazy loading goes that I've seen is at Facebook. I forgot the entire details of this, but I listened to a talk a number of years ago of a machine learning based way that they have their lazy loading set up, where it, of course, when a user does something that it actually does need that particular code, it'll lazy load it at that point, but then it tries to like anticipate ahead of time based off of their previous actions that, for example, if this user comes
have that for
in from
Angular.
this path, that it's machine learning based. I didn't realize that. What is
Minko has created a library that does this for Angular, lazy loaded based on patterns learned from Google search, from Google tags, Google ad things. You
really?
can evolve. Yeah.
Where is that? Is that something that
I would have to check out Minko's GitHub. It's there somewhere.
All right, yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I'm sure he took inspiration from the Facebook stuff, because I believe that they were like leading that before. So anyway, okay, cool. All right, thank you everyone for the good questions, good discussion topics. Let's move on to the main topic for today, which basically came from, about a month or so ago. I did look to, I don't know if everybody else does this, but at the end of the year, I do always I don't have like resolutions per se, but I do think about like, oh, new year, let's think about like the new stuff that I want to get accomplished, all this different stuff. And even though, like I was telling Kyler before, I haven't signed up to actually go fly to a conference in person yet, I do want to start to get to that point. And so I started applying for some conferences, and in doing that, I was kind of thinking through kind of the science and the art behind that. But actually, more recently, even after I posted this event and this topic, I realized that actually, really, what we're talking about, we'll focus mostly on submitting applications for conferences and conference talks as kind of an example, but really, actually, a lot of the underlying science and art behind this is very similar to when you're applying for a job, when you're doing marketing copy to try and convince someone to buy your product. Like basically anything where you are kind of trying to send something like a text verbiage to someone to convince them to do something. So like I said, we're going to focus on it. I've some talk titles that I want to kind of go through and kind of like evaluate and that type of thing. We'll use that as kind of the basis, but I think the stuff that we're going to talk about actually can be applied in a lot of different areas, if that makes sense. So to get started on this, before I wrote down a whole bunch of stuff that I think is important and that type of thing, but I'd love to kind of just do a quick brainstorming session with everyone and just kind of hear. We don't have to necessarily dive in. Let's try to stop ourselves from diving into each of the different topics, but let's just hear from everyone of like, what are the different types of things really quickly that you think are important when you're submitting applications? What high level things do you think are important?
A title that will catch the conference organizer's attention, and a really unique description that is about 4 or 5 sentences long that they can digest quickly, and something that'll stand out in their memory.
Yep,
yeah,
that's a good one.
I think the description needs to somehow be able to tell them that you have thought about this topic thoroughly and are not wanting to present just because this is a hot topic. Like you know what you will be talking about, and you're not just using keywords, the buzzwords, just to get selected. You know something more, or you have thought of this, and I know it's a lot of it's and that's where it gets tricky. Like you may not be good in expressing yourself in 4 or 5 sentences, but I think just by the nature of how speakers get selected, until you become John, Papa, or Sander, I guess you just need to unless you have that kind of a reputation, you need to really think thoroughly of the title and the description. That's definitely
Yeah.
what
Also
they
another
have going on with.
also another trick is called a Manfred, which is just applying with 30 different talks.
Wait, what do you mean by that, Sander? Sorry.
Have you ever organized a conference?
No.
Oh, okay. If you ever have organized a conference, you will recognize the phrase, "Oh, he's doing a Manfred." I'm not naming anyone, but someone in our community named Manfred is applying for every conference with like a gazillion of proposals.
Oh, wow.
I see. Sort of scattershot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like at least one of those 30 will get selected.
Well, to be honest, he has excellent talks every
That's true.
freaking time.
I mean, like if someone is pulling a Manfred and that someone is not actually Manfred, I guess their intention is that at least one of them would get selected.
I wanted to ask you about that scenario. What happens if a no Manfred, like any one of us, except for Sandra and Jeff probably, and maybe Kyler and Kita, what if any regular folk applies with 30 different talks? Is that going to look bad?
No, it's not looking back, but be prepared to do more than one talk.
Yeah, be prepared if more
Wow.
than one gets selected.
Because I know someone else that used this tactic, and those someone else, I don't know, but you might know them as Mike and Brandon, and they got selected for 4 different talks in one conference.
Oh, I remember that conference. Yes, that was interesting. But
And
I
they
feel
were
like-
not prepared for that.
But I feel like that I don't want to dive too much into these. I want to circle back, but just really quick on that topic. I feel like that is sort of a shortcut almost for you not knowing which one is gonna be the best one. So I feel like if you put more time into like understanding what the organizers want, what the community wants, like then you would know ahead of time. Like you might not even bother with these. Like you're just kind of like, oh, we'll see what they like, because you don't know what they're like.
Okay, but
So
so
I
how
mean,
do you find out? How do you find out what the organizers want?
Ask them.
That's a great question. And Sanders actually is exactly right. A lot of times the conference organizer, it's not like a secret, right? Like they would be very open and just go ahead and ask, or well, actually, okay. Question to you guys, other than asking the organizers, this is, I feel like when I talk to my kids, like trying to, what are some other ways that you guys think you can get that answer indirectly? There is a way. What do you think it is?
Stalk
Stalk
them.
It's very
You're synchronized.
No, indirect. So there's a way that you don't even have to say anything to them at
That's
all.
still stalking them. Well, do your homework, do research, look at past things they have organized.
That's it. So if the conference has been around for a while, if it's assuming that it's been the same organizing team, if you just look at previous talks, right? Because obviously whatever their decision-making process is, and you can get a feel from after you look at the previous talks of, okay, they generally like these types of things or that. So that usually is actually sometimes that might even be a better indicator than actually asking them, because they probably have some internal biases or something like that may not even be realized. But okay, what else? What are some other things you guys think are important in general outside of what we talked about so far for for applications to do talks and that type of thing?
I think you have to consider how hot the topic is and how many other people are going to be submitting talks just like it. So right now, like I'm blanking on the word, but MFEs are really popular, right? So micro front end architecture. So there's probably going to be a lot of talks submitted on that.
Yep.
So
I will do a talk why it's a really, really, really bad idea, though.
Oh, why NFTs are? Yeah.
That might be
there's
easy.
sort of,
You'll probably get selected for that one.
well, so with what you're talking about, Kyler, I feel I think some of these things, like, I want to think through a little bit more and maybe like do a blog post on or something. But like with that, I feel like there's like a multi-dimensional matrix of what percent of the community is interested in this. How high is the interest level? Like, so is it, because it could be, low percentage or relatively speaking, the community, but like super, super high interest level. So those are kind of like variables. And then it's like, how many other people are applying, doing the same type of talk or who have done it either before or are trying to do it now. That's like another degree of the matrix. And then how unique is the one that you are trying to do? So like those are like four things, and maybe there's other dimensions too or whatever else, but depending on where you are in that scale can affect things a lot as well.
Yeah, something you said also reminds me of something else that I wanted to talk about, but it's whatever the topic it is that you're submitting for, the more people that in that community that it's going to appeal to, the more likely it is to get selected. For example, if you submit to ngconf and you're talking about .NET and Angular, that's really only going to appeal to a subset of the Angular community using .NET. So, I think you'll probably have less of a chance of getting that talk selected than something that would apply to everyone in the Angular community.
Yep.
I can just give you a title. The bane of existence and getting rid of ng modules. There.
And everybody does ng modules. That percentage of people who deal with that are, is high. Maybe depending on how you think, maybe the pain is high too.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing is, clickbait. Basically, that works. Clickbait works for getting your talk selected. Come up with a good title. Come up with a short. I would even say do 5 sentences. If you have like 2 sentences that really nail your talk and make the point what you're making to make. There are usually 2 synopses you put in. You have the synopsis that goes to the that sells your talk. It also goes to the conference attendees, and you have like a bigger one that goes to the conference organizers, where you can say, hey, this is what I want to talk, and you have a real snappy clickbaity title and thing for your talk, and then you go into why you are naming it like this. And you have to deliver. If you are making a clickbaity talk, you have to make sure that you're somewhat covering the area. And something
Dale,
that also go ahead.
Sorry, Dale, what did you have?
I'm just curious if some like more than one people apply for the same topic, like what criteria that one person get picked, or like all of them, or just few of them have gonna talk about one thing.
It's a really good question, definitely. And I think I'll just add my 2 cents right off the bat. There is that I feel like there's definitely, well, actually, I shouldn't say, conference organizers will do different things. So like this goes back to like knowing the conference and what organizers and what they're thinking about and that type of thing. But I think in a lot of cases, they don't want to have too many of the same topics. So like as they kind of look through the list of like the submissions, they'll get a sense of like what the topics are, and they'll be like, okay, we probably can't have more than one or two of this particular topic, whatever it is, regardless of how good they are or whatever. So then it's like, let's bring all the ones together that like are good. And then it's like, how do you differentiate between them? Right. And I think some of the stuff we already discussed is a part of it, the title and that type of thing. But honestly, there are some things where it comes down to like what I feel like are like tiebreakers that aren't like the only reason why your talk's taking, but definitely are tiebreakers. So like that's where it's like, how well known is this person or what they've done in the past? Can they deliver on it? That type of thing. Or I don't know. What are some other tiebreaker type things that you guys, Sandra and Kyler and Natty, that you guys have seen?
So if I were the conference organizer, I would not want same kind of people talking about all the serious topics, if you know what I mean. Like I would want representation. So I don't know how other conference people think about it, the organizers think about it, but
Well, if you're organizing a conference, you want to have like a healthy mix between known speakers because you have to sell
Right.
your tickets,
Mm.
and new speakers. And if you are going to do a talk about micro front ends, which is like a hot topic, and you say, "Hey, I know something about this. I'm going to do a talk." Be prepared that that your talk is going to compete with Manfred Steyer, because he's going to want to talk about micro front ends too. And probably, I'm pretty sure Manfred's talk is going to win from whoever else talk about micro front ends. If we want to have a micro front ends thing on my conference, and Manfred says, "Hey, I want to talk about micro front ends," then okay, that's covered, and I'm done. And as a conference organizer, I want to have new people, but I will not put my most valuable time slots to unknowns. So there needs to be a mix always.
Actually, it's interesting with what you just said, Sander. You made me realize, which I wasn't thinking about before, the reason why I don't do the Manfred where I do 100 applications, but I do actually always do more than one. Like I'll do at least two, if not like three. Like it's usually 2 or 3 is the most. But the reason is actually specifically because like I do put a ton of effort into making each one as good as possible. But I know that sometimes it's for one of those reasons or another that one might not work out because they want somebody new, or there's somebody else who's like a bigger expert or whatever else. So sometimes even if it gives them that optionality that like, oh, I think this person is good and has good submissions, but we'll put them for this other topic instead of that. So I guess the recommendation there may be not to do 100 but maybe do 2.
Yeah, you can do a couple. I have done a couple for some conferences, but to be honest, for most conferences where I did submit a talk, I submitted one talk, and I made also sure that it was like an interesting topic and that I could deliver on it. So, but then most people that know me know that I go for the deep technical talks, and that is usually if they have like room for that, they will have like 1 or 2 of the deep technical talks, because if all your talks are deep technical talks, your attendees are going to be fried half the first day.
Yeah,
and that is also not something you don't want. So yeah, you have to have a mix. And apparently my niche is doing deep technical talks or going into a subject and make an absolute mess out of it. I'm good at those things. Another thing you can do is build a library, make it public, have a boatload of users for it, and that's also a good way to get into talking. Might be a little bit more work than you are aiming for.
Yeah, just a little bit more, not that much.
Jayan, did you have something you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, what is the idea when you apply for a talk? Like, should you have a talk prepared beforehand you're applying for the proposal, or should you prefer after you get accepted?
Well, I'm sure you guys have other thoughts, but for me, on to answer that question, is that there would be no possible way for me to have the full talk when I apply, because it takes me forever to create. Like, unlike Sandra, I create a very in-depth and take a lot of time. But I do think it makes sense to like think it out. So like it shouldn't be just that you're like, oh, I'll pick some topic out of the air and then write like a clickbaity title, like, or whatever. Like there should be some thought into like what it actually would be, what would be like a truly good, valuable thing out of what you would do once you have the time to like fully flesh it out.
Yeah. Also, it needs to be a subject that you care about.
Yeah, for sure. And Kita, did I cut you off before? Or were you going to say something else?
I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry, I remember now. I was gonna say that, like, the thing that Sanders said, that they would always want to mix, and that's 100% absolutely true and valid, because they want to sell their tickets. But that's where the struggle lies for beginners, is that there would be a lot of beginners. And so to be one of the few beginners who actually get selected, that's where it's more competitive. Like, for someone like Sander or Manfred, the conference organizers will know that they don't have to worry too much about the quality of their talk. But when they're trying to compare for a beginner, two beginners talking about like something basic, maybe they've just submitted about something about Angular CDK, and they know, like, okay, they meet all the other criteria, that the titles are good, and then the descriptions make sense, and then Angular CDK is something that generally is vastly used in the community, like they meet all the other filtering criteria. Then selecting between two beginners gets competitive, and I don't know how that gets handled, honestly.
Yeah, and Kita, I think you have a great point there, that when you just aren't as well known to the organizers, you might have to put in more effort, frankly, because you put in more time.
If you are unknown, if you are unknown, and this was something that was way harder in the past, but now it's very easy to do this. Create a video. Just make a video of yourself presenting the thing, and it doesn't have to be the full-blown talk, but the conference organizers can see how you are presenting, and they can see your presenting skills a little bit, and most of them have done it more than once, so they know what they are looking for, and they can see in 5 minutes of video, okay, this is going to work for us or not. If you are applying for a conference in America or in England, and you have a very, very fat accent that is hard to follow for the larger public, no matter how interesting your talk is, you're not going to be selected. And that sounds harsh, and it is a little bit harsh. At the same time, a conference talk needs to be understandable for all the attendees. And if you have a heavy fat accent of some kind, and that can even be a Walish accent, which is an English accent in England itself, and it is basically what English once was, but nobody can understand the people talking that, not even the English. So things like that, if you do that in a presentation, people go like, yeah, the subject is interesting and you have excellent visuals, but we have no clue what you're talking about. So nope.
Yeah, so like the video of yourself, or a small one as a sample, if you don't have it, there's nothing else to take a look to, or even creating, and maybe you do have to create that GitHub repo or something. They're just something so that they can look at to be like, oh yeah, they aren't just making this up on the fly.
Yeah, they can look at your code, or if you have spoken at smaller meetups, quite often there are videos of those now. Just put in a couple of links like, hey, I'm talking here and here. More and more conference organizers are asking for that. Hey, do you have video content of your own stuff? And then they
In
go.
this same topic, do conference organizers do background checks when junior people submit talks, or do they only see what you're submitting there?
It depends on what you mean by background checks. Do they like
Like, do they
Google
go
your
on
name?
Google? Yes, or YouTube, or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes. Oh, well, I don't think they would for every single person, but like, but yes, like for some things, if it comes down to like, okay, this sounds interesting, but I don't know this person, let me look into that. So maybe a small subset. They would not necessarily everyone.
No, they don't do it for everyone, because if you are organizing something, you often get like 300 to 400 proposals, and you have to sift through all of those. And if you have to, even reading all of those is a huge task. And then you still have to make a decision. So, yeah, it's a lot of work organizing a conference, and selecting talks is like one of the biggest issues. And sometimes you don't even. Some conferences get like 400, and smaller conferences barely get enough speakers to get through the day. So
Kyle,
if you're,
you have something, sorry, Sandy, what were you saying?
Yeah, if you are going for one of the smaller conferences, there is a way bigger chance you are getting in, because the big speakers are going, oh, I don't know that conference, I will not go there. It's not worth my time. And there you can get your gears going.
Yes, that's a good tip, actually. Kyler,
one more thing I wanted to touch on is it's hard to make yourself known in the community without giving talks, right? But there is a networking aspect here. When you go to conferences, go introduce yourself to speakers and other people who might be organizers. I've done that in the past, and because of that, I'm friends with a lot of GDEs and Microsoft MVPs. And, you know, when conference organizers look at my name or they're in the community, like on Twitter, they see me interacting with a bunch of GDEs and that sort of stuff, they'll start to see your name all over the place. And I know a lot of other people, and this advice was given to me by somebody who spoke at NG Atlanta for the first time, and she nailed her talk. Her first talk ever, she was like, the talk was amazing. She delivered her content like she had personal lessons with John Popper or something. But she did really, like, there's no way you could tell it was her first talk, but and this was the tip she gave me. She's like, if you want to get your talk selected, interface with people that are in the community, you know, talk to them and, you know, find out about their experiences, learn from them. You know, over time, the organizers will see you in conversations with these people, and your name is going to start to pop up everywhere. And then when you submit a talk, they're going to recognize you. They're like, oh yeah, I saw them talking to so-and-so or so-and-so. And, you know, so, you know, that can kind of.
That's how I got into it.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. Yeah. Actually, go ahead, Ankita, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say that I kind of have to drop for a work meeting, but I just want to say this out there for anyone who's looking to start talking. You're welcome to do so on the South Asia channel if you want to practice on us. We meet every Wednesdays, and you can practice the same topic several times. I mean, throughout the months, not that you keep coming again and again. Do your work and come back, but yeah.
We are always
say that.
As the Dutch Angle group, we are also looking for speakers every now and then. So there are a lot of meetups that need speakers. So if you are not sure about it, just visit one of their meetings or a couple of their meetings, and then you get a feel for the group and you can apply better. Also, if the organizers have seen you popping up in a couple of meetings, the chance of you being picked as the next speaker is considerably larger. Hi, Glenn.
So we're right at the top of the hour. We got to end. But first of all, thank you for everyone for their points. All really good. I agree with so many of the things that we discussed. In fact, I have from stuff even before this meeting when I was starting to plan this out. There's like 3 big topics that we didn't even get to. Plus, one thing I really wanted to do was I was going to go through I picked NG Vikings just because I like that conference and whatever. But like I was going to pick some conference to actually go on their website and actually do like a tear down for like basically analysis for some of the talk titles and whatever else, which I think would be interesting as well. So this is what we're going to do.
Sounds like we need a part 2 of this meeting.
Yes, we're going to part 2. It's going to be a fun part 2. So let's plan on in 2 weeks from today, part 2, plus we'll do some other stuff as well. All right. So thanks everyone for joining. Have a great weekend. I will talk to everybody soon.
Yeah, and thanks to AG Grid, for keeping Angular Nation alive. So special thanks to them. Just FYI.
Thank you.
It was nice to see
AG
you
Grid.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks.
See you
Thanks,
guys.
guys. Bye
You
bye.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Yeah.